Starbucks is everywhere.
Starbucks, it's announcing more than 1,000 new stores.
Starbucks has opened a new cafe with a very unusual view.
Starbucks just opened its 30,000th store in Shenzhen, China.
Over 40,000 stores in more than 80 countries. Only McDonald's has more locations. But Starbucks wasn't always like this. In fact, when it first started, you couldn't even buy a cup of coffee there. Over the last 50 years, Starbucks has evolved into something much bigger than a coffee shop. It's a cultural powerhouse, a status symbol, and a financial giant with billions of dollars. So how did a small coffee shop in Seattle's Pike Place market turn into a pseudo-bank, holding more cash than most financial institutions? And could that very shift be its downfall? It all started in 1971 in the heart of Seattle, when three coffee enthusiasts opened a small shop called Starbucks in Pike Place Market. Inspired by coffee pioneer Alfred Peet, they focused on selling high-quality Arabica beans and coffee equipment. No lattes, no cappuccinos, no brewed coffee. Just whole beans for people to take home. Now that may sound like an old coffee bean shop, but at the time, America's coffee culture was quite frankly hot sludge. Literally. Coffee wasn't an experience or even a drink people thought about. It was just a bitter, burnt necessity for waking up in the morning. The average household relied on giant tins of Folgers or instant coffee. People were convinced that convenience mattered more than taste, causing coffee to become nothing more than flavorless coffee crystals.
Coffee, but Colombian decaffeinated coffee crystals.
What?
Surprising, I know, but most people at the time didn't even realize coffee could taste good.
Harvey, want anything special for your birthday?
Just a decent cup of coffee.
The big reason? Supermarkets didn't stock high-quality beans, and there were no local roasters. So what people drank was just an afterthought, a routine, a caffeine vehicle. Basically, a brown, sludgy, 5-hour energy. Thanks to marketing by the big coffee companies, the idea that someone would spend extra money on freshly roasted, whole bean coffee seemed absurd. Why go through all that trouble when you could just scoop some instant powder, pour hot water over it, and call it a day? And that's where Starbucks came in. The company at the time was for purists, for a very small, specific customer. People passionate about coffee. But there was a problem. Most people, even those passionate about coffee, didn't actually know much yet about premium coffee. They had no concept of grind size, water temperature, extraction time. So Starbucks didn't just sell beans, they educated customers on how to brew properly. They explained why fresh grinding mattered, why boiling water burned the coffee, and why carefully sourced, freshly roasted beans tasted so much better than those horrendous coffee crystals.
You're drinking Colombian decaf coffee crystals?
You son of a bitch.
But if you aren't going to sell freshly made coffee, then you need to sell people the way to grind up their beans. Enter Howard Schultz. In 1981, Howard was working as a sales rep for a Swedish housewares company that sold coffee makers, traveling from city to city, pitching high-end kitchen products to department stores and specialty retailers. He had seen every kind of coffee setup imaginable. Cheap percolators bubbling burnt coffee, weak drip machines producing lifeless brews, and of course, instant coffee crystals that would make anyone feel upset.
Angry.
Unlike Chris, Schultz, like most Americans, didn't care about where his coffee came from. It was just an afterthought in his daily routine. But then he came across Starbucks. The company was one of his clients, and it was ordering an unusual number of premium coffee makers for such a small store. So they caught his attention. I mean, why would they need that much high-end coffee equipment? So a curious Schultz flew up to Seattle to see this strange little company. When he stepped inside, he immediately knew this wasn't like any other coffee shop he had ever seen. There was no drip machine burning stale coffee on a hot plate, no instant mix packets, no crystals to be seen.
When I came here for the first time, had never been in a Starbucks store. Walked into this very store, and by the way, we have changed nothing through the years. This is the original store as is. And they handed me a cup of coffee made this way. Now this is a cup of Sumatra, which is Indonesian coffee. This is how I tasted my first cup of coffee. And I just knew from that moment on that I was home.
It was a completely different way of thinking about coffee, one that most of America had never even considered. Schultz had to be a part of this coffee movement. So in 1982, he joined Starbucks as head of marketing. But at the time, Starbucks was still just a small, local business with only 3 stores. The founders had no plans for expansion. They were content selling their high-quality beans to Seattle purists. Schultz, however, saw something far bigger. He believed Starbucks could be more than just a retailer. It could transform the way Americans experienced coffee. And Schultz's dream fully formed after a trip to Milan, Italy in 1983. While in Milan, Schultz was mesmerized. The city's bustling espresso bars, the homey cafes where baristas crafted perfect lattes and cappuccinos. People didn't just buy and drink their coffee, they socialized. They enjoyed their coffee. It wasn't fast-paced and corporate like America. Schultz saw the future in this moment. Starbucks shouldn't just sell coffee beans, or even just coffee. It needed to create a coffee culture, a place where people could spend time outside of work and home. He returned to Seattle fired up with a new vision for Starbucks. But when he pitched the idea, the founders shut him down. They didn't want Starbucks to become a cafe. They wanted to stick to selling beans. Schultz had seen something they hadn't, the future. And if Starbucks wouldn't change, he'd have to do it himself. Frustrated but determined, Schultz left Starbucks in 1985. He started Il Giornale, a coffee company inspired by Italian espresso bars. But investors scoffed at the idea that Americans would pay premium prices for espresso. Even Lavazza, Italy's coffee giant, turned him down. Still, Schultz pressed on. Securing backing from a few Seattle investors, Il Giornale quickly gained a following. But then, in 1987, Starbucks founders decided to sell, and Schultz saw this as his opportunity to get the brand he loved. There was just one problem. He needed $3.8 million, and a rival investor was outbidding him. Desperate, Schultz turned to Bill Gates Sr., one of Seattle's most powerful figures. And yes, that's Bill Gates' father. After hearing Schultz's story, Gates Sr. went straight to the investor's office and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself. This is not going to go down. You are going to stand down, and this kid is going to realize his dream." Absolutely incredible story. With the other investor out of the way, Schultz raised the money he needed. And by August of 1987, he officially acquired Starbucks, merging it with Il Giornale. Schultz had done it, and with his vision from Milan in mind, he transformed Starbucks overnight. No longer just a coffee bean retailer, but an experience. A place where people could sit, socialize, and enjoy handcrafted drinks. A third place to spend time between home and work. And from that moment forward, growth was fast and relentless. Pretty soon, Starbucks was everywhere. And by 1992, only 5 years later, Starbucks went public, raising $250 million, fueling even faster expansion. Over the next decade, the company would grow even more, acquiring companies like the Coffee Connection on the East Coast, expanding into Europe and Asia. Schultz's dream came true. He had done what he set out to do. He changed the way Americans saw coffee. He saved us from ever drinking coffee crystals again. So with his mission accomplished, Schultz stepped down as CEO, believing he had built a strong enough foundation for Starbucks to thrive without him. But sadly, he was wrong. And in his absence, everything changed. Under new leadership, the company pushed aggressive expansion at the cost of quality. Hundreds of new locations opened with little regard for profitability. In an attempt to streamline operations, Starbucks cut costs, but in ways that eroded the Starbucks experience. First, they switched to automated espresso machines, taking the craftsmanship out of drink making. Second, they overloaded stores with merchandise and food items, making Starbucks feel more like a fast food chain than a local coffee shop. And third, they started packaging beans in vacuum-sealed bags instead of grinding them in store, eliminating the rich aroma of coffee that Starbucks was known for. People noticed the difference, and they noticed fast. What was once a premium handcrafted experience started to feel like mass-produced and impersonal. Starbucks had transformed into just another chain. It was becoming exactly what it set out to replace just 20 years before. And the consequences were severe. By 2008, Starbucks stock had plummeted, and for the first time in the company's history, sales declined. The company was just months away from financial disaster, just as the country was entering the Great Recession. Schultz, watching from the sidelines, saw that the brand he built, that he loved, his coffee passion, was on the verge of collapse. So that year, he returned as CEO to fix what had been tarnished. His first move? Drastic cuts. He closed 600 100 underperforming stores, a painful but necessary step to stop the bleeding. Then he laid off thousands of employees and halted all expansion plans. But Schultz knew that cost-cutting alone wouldn't save Starbucks. He needed to bring back what made it special. He needed to make coffee great again and make the stores feel like they should, the third place. So Schultz made a bold move. He shut down every single Starbucks store in the US for an afternoon. The reason? To retrain every single barista on how to make the perfect espresso. To Schultz, this wasn't just about coffee quality. It was about resetting the company's culture. He wanted employees to feel the craft again, to take pride in their work, and to reconnect with why Starbucks existed in the first place. And it worked. Slowly, the experience improved. Customers began to trust Starbucks again. Morale inside the company rebounded, and Starbucks stopped focusing on expansion and focused on the experience. In only 2 years, the company was back on track and profits soared. But Howard Schultz knew Starbucks couldn't just rely on physical stores. The future was digital. And one of the biggest game changers, mobile order and pay. In 2011, Starbucks introduced its mobile payment system, allowing customers to pay with their phones. This was way before mobile wallets like Apple Pay were mainstream. Over 10% of all Starbucks transactions were being made via mobile, a number unheard of in the restaurant industry at that time. By 2015, Starbucks took it even further with mobile order and pay, allowing customers to order ahead and skip the line. People loved it so much so that it created problems. By 2017, almost 25% of all Starbucks transactions were being made through mobile ordering, and stores became overwhelmed. During peak hours, crowds of customers waited for their mobile orders, making stores feel more like busy pickup stations than the welcoming cafes they were designed to be. And customers who ordered in store felt pushed aside by the overwhelming volume of mobile orders. All that said, Starbucks had built something incredible, a seamless digital ecosystem where millions of customers were preloading money, earning rewards, and making purchases effortless. One of Starbucks' biggest successes wasn't just mobile ordering, it was the Starbucks Rewards program. By incentivizing customers to preload money onto their Starbucks account, the company had essentially turned itself into a bank. And by 2016, customers had deposited $1.2 billion onto their Starbucks accounts, more than most US banks held in consumer deposits. And this wasn't just free money, it was an interest-free loan to Starbucks, giving the company liquidity and financial flexibility that few retailers could match. Not to mention, it worked. Customers who used the Starbucks Rewards program spent more per visit, returned more often, and became deeply loyal to the brand. By 2020, Starbucks had built one of the most advanced digital ecosystems in retail. With almost 20 million active Starbucks Rewards members, Starbucks Rewards customers contributing 50% of the company's net sales, and billions in preloaded cash sitting in Starbucks accounts. All thanks to a fully integrated app experience, allowing customers to order, pay, earn rewards, and customize drinks instantly. Then came COVID-19.
This is a rapidly emerging situation where there is not a cause for alarm.
The first US case has been detected.
There's confirmation the coronavirus has reached Australia.
China is urging its citizens not to travel abroad as it struggles to contain the virus.
While the pandemic devastated the restaurant industry, Starbucks had a major advantage. It was already built for mobile orders and contactless payments. By 2021, digital orders made up nearly half of total transactions, proving that Starbucks had quietly transformed from a coffee company into a tech-driven retail powerhouse. But all this success came at a cost. The third place, the warm, welcoming cafe environment where people lingered, read, studied, and socialized, had started to fade. Instead of a barista calling your wrong name with a smile, a label printer spits out a sticker. Instead of customers chatting with employees, people rush in, grab their drink from a crowded pickup counter, and take off. Starbucks had become so efficient that it had stripped away the thing that made it special in the first place. The company's transformation into a digital bank was a brilliant short-term financial move, but a disastrous long-term business strategy. It created a hyper-efficient machine, but in doing so, Starbucks lost the very thing that made it special, the human connection. Sadly, Starbucks lost its way again, and this time Howard Schultz wasn't there to save it. For many, it felt like Starbucks was on its way to becoming the McDonald's of coffee, a place to buy a product, and really nothing more. But then something happened. A new CEO named Brian Niccol was hired, and he told the world there was a problem.
I think just what happened with mobile ordering is kind of chipped away at a little bit of that soul and that connection because we went to labels and we stopped writing on the cups. And, we started looking at how you can remove seconds from the proposition as opposed to how do you maintain the experience and the connection and the integrity of what goes even beyond a great cup of coffee.
So he created a plan called Back to Starbucks, and its goal, to fix the issues that arose during COVID, to have the company refocus on craftsmanship, community, and connection, to bring back simple things like handwritten names on cups and more engagement between baristas and customers.
We got to get what I would call the soul of the business back and this connection back and the partner experience back so that the customer feels the brand again, okay? And I think when we get that back, there's tremendous growth in front of us because, frankly, the reality is so many things kind of isolate you as opposed to bring you together. I think people want to get out of the loneliness phase and get back to the connection phase. And I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, and it's true everywhere I've been. Whether it was Italy, which was also a little bit surreal because, the whole Starbucks original idea came from Howard visiting Italy, and here I am back in like Milan, seeing people walk around with Starbucks cups. And it just demonstrates this is one of those human truths that just connects people all around the world.
Although it's too early to say, it looks like under Brian Nichols, Starbucks might be making a comeback. But the question is, what to do about the Starbucks bank? According to Brian, digital purchasing has tarnished the Starbucks experience. Yet, it makes up over 30% of their purchases. So what do they do? Nickel needs to figure out how to fix the cafe experience without sacrificing mobile ordering, how to fix the soul of the brand without uprooting their new banking revenue stream. Although Brian is focused on bringing back what made Starbucks a third place, he can't forget about the other customers, the ones they've gained over the past decade, the ones who want their coffee as fast as possible. Although Brian is focused on bringing back what made Starbucks a third place, he can't forget about the other customers, the ones that they gained over the past decade, the ones who want their coffee as fast as possible. The company needs to realize it has two types of customers now, one that wants their coffee quick and one that wants it personal. And that's a hard balance to strike, but it needs to be solved quick if the company plans to stay ahead. Starbucks stands at a crossroads. For decades, it built its success on creating an experience, an inviting, community-driven third place where people could connect over great coffee. But as digital ordering took over, the balance shifted. Stores became more efficient, but less personal. Faster, but less welcoming. The challenge is clear. Starbucks needs to master both worlds. It must rebuild the warmth of the in-store experience, where baristas know your name, or at least someone's name, where customers feel welcome to sit, talk, and stay a while. But at the same time, it also has to perfect its digital presence, ensuring mobile orders are seamless without disrupting the cafe atmosphere. If Starbucks can combine the convenience of technology with the soul of its brand, it won't just be a coffee company, it will be the ultimate coffee experience, wherever customers choose to engage. The future of Starbucks isn't just in-store or digital, it's both. And finding that balance will define its next chapter. I'm excited to see what they do, and I hope it all works out.
We're not in the business of filling bellies. This is a corporation, it is a for-profit business, but our approach for 30 plus years has been unique and different. Not better, just different.
Thanks everyone for watching. If you like this video, go check out my other one on why Google search is dying. I think you'll like it. See you next time.